Hi, I'm Annie Fitzsimmons. I'm your Washington Realtors legal hotline lawyer, and today we are once again reaching into the Washington Realtors legal hotline mailbag to answer your questions. Today's mailbag question asks, does a seller have the right to reject an offer from a buyer if the buyer is using a specific lender? Pause. Absolutely. I know that answer is going to come as a surprise to some of you. But seller can absolutely reject buyer's offer if buyer is using a lender that seller does not believe will do a competent job. Let's think back through how we get to the actual question asked. This question originates, in most cases, with the fact that buyer is asking seller to give buyer a financing contingency. What is a financing contingency? Financing contingency is buyer's way of saying this: seller, I love your house. I want to buy your house. The only problem is I don't know if I can afford your house. So let's put all the risk on you, seller, that I will be able to get financing because we'll have you, seller, take your house essentially off the market while I go and do the things that I need to do to figure out whether or not I can get a loan, starting with choosing the lender. And then I'm going to decide when I make application, although I have to do it within 5 days, when within those 5 days, and more importantly after that, how quickly am I going to get documents to my lender? When the lender asks me for information, how am I going to respond? And on and on and on. And all of that time, seller, you just keep your house off the market. Don't take offers from any other buyer. Okay, so let's start then with the very first question. The very first question should be, does seller have to agree to give buyer a financing contingency? Is a seller obligated to enter a purchase and sale agreement giving buyer the right to a financing contingency? And the answer to the question is absolutely and unequivocally no. Seller has no such obligation. Seller does not have to give buyer a financing contingency. Fast forward to the next question. If seller gives buyer a financing contingency, does seller have the right to condition that financing contingency on buyer using a lender deemed competent by seller? And the answer to that question is also unequivocally yes. If seller has reason to believe that the lender chosen by buyer is not going to do a competent job of getting the information necessary to make a determination that buyer is or is not qualified to purchase this property in a timely manner, seller doesn't have to agree to give buyer the financing contingency. Said differently, seller can condition buyer's opportunity for a financing contingency on buyer using a lender deemed competent by seller. Listing brokers, I do not encourage you in any way, shape, or form to have a list of one available lender. That would be foolish. There are numerous competent lenders available to buyers. Sellers should have as broad a range of acceptable lenders as possible. But if seller has reason to believe that a specific lender isn't going to do a good job, seller is not obligated to give a financing contingency to a buyer using that lender. Listing brokers, should you be inquiring of buyers as to the lender that buyer is going to use? Absolutely. Are buyers obligated to use the lender that provides the pre-qualification letter that buyer might submit as part of their offer? Nope. There's no language in the statewide form purchase and sale agreement that obligates buyer to use the lender that prepared the pre-qualification letter. Sellers, if you want buyer to use that lender, you need to make it a requirement of the purchase and sale agreement. If seller wants to further define the options available to buyer with respect to available lenders, that needs to be done in writing as well and made to be part of the purchase agreement. This is not something that should be left a conversation between the brokers with seller then relying on the outcome of that oral conversation to protect seller's interest with respect to buyer's selection of lender. This needs to be put in writing if this is an issue that's important to seller. I know that this information is likely surprising to many of you. If you want to follow up with a question about what this looks like in a real life transaction, please send an email to me, legalhotline@warealtor.org. Thank you for being a Washington Realtors member. This is a competitive seller's market, and it's important that you as members of the industry know how to protect your client's interests, whether the buyer or the seller in the transaction. I look forward to hearing from you.